You open your last mortgage statement. There is one number on that page that decides whether paying it down or investing makes you richer over the next 20 years. Most homeowners have never been told what to do with it. If you are a homeowner with an extra $500 a month and you have been quietly torn between paying down the loan and investing the difference, you are doing the same math I have watched smart people get wrong for years. I keep seeing the same pattern. People skip past the one number that actually matters and argue about everything else. So let me show you the math first. Honestly, openly, no suspense. $500 a month, invested at a 7% annualized return, compounded monthly for 20 years, grows to $261,983.57. That figure comes straight from the Investor.gov compound interest calculator, and it is the verified number behind every video like this one. Why 7%? Because large company stocks have produced an annualized return of about 10.1% across nearly a century of data, and when you back out inflation and a realistic chunk of taxes, the historical real number sits closer to that 7% floor most planners use. You can argue at the edges. You cannot argue with the framework. And if you run that same $500 a month inside a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k, capital gains and dividends are not taxed along the way, and qualified withdrawals come out tax-free. That is a meaningful tailwind on the investing side that pure math videos love to skip over. Now picture the other side. You take that same $500 and throw it at extra principal on your mortgage. The return on that move is exactly your interest rate. If your rate is 4%, you earn a guaranteed 4%. If your rate is 7%, you earn a guaranteed 7%. No volatility, no tax drag, no behavior risk. Quick aside on fund choice, if you do invest, the expense ratio matters more than people think. VOO and IVV both run at 0.03%. SPY runs at 0.0945%. On a six-figure portfolio over decades, that gap is real money. Not life-changing, but real. Okay, so the headline number leans toward investing. That is true. It is also incomplete. Here is what most videos refuse to tell you. The single number that decides whether the headline answer applies to you is your mortgage rate and where it sits relative to a 3 to 6% band. Long-standing financial consensus calls that band the gray zone. Below it, the math leans hard toward investing. Above it, paying down the loan becomes genuinely competitive with what your money could earn in the market after taxes and after the chunk you give back to volatility. Inside it, the answer is genuinely ambiguous. That ambiguity is not a cop-out. After-tax investment returns are always lower than pre-tax returns. So a guaranteed 5% on a mortgage payoff, no taxes, no risk, no behavior, starts looking dead even with a 7% market return that gets clipped by capital gains tax and behavior gaps. That is the whole shape of the decision. So pull up your mortgage statement. Find your rate. Below 4%, investing has a structural advantage. Above 6%, paydown gets serious. Between 4 and 6, you are in the zone where neither side is wrong. You might be thinking, fine, my rate is below 4, let's just invest, easy. But there is a piece of this that almost no investing video will walk you through, and it deserves 3 minutes of your attention. Picture this. You are 55 years old. You have been investing $500 a month for 18 years. The market has cooperated. Your account is at $230,000. You are 18 months from retirement. And then the market drops 38.5% in a single year, exactly the way the S&P 500 did in 2008. Your $230,000 becomes roughly $143,000. Same money you invested, same plan, different timing, and you are 18 months from needing it. This is sequence of returns risk. Vanguard and Morningstar research has documented it for years. Negative returns hitting early in your withdrawal phase do disproportionate damage, because every withdrawal forces you to sell at depressed prices. Two retirees with identical average returns can end up hundreds of thousands of dollars apart based purely on when the losses landed. Compounding does not really wake up until years 12 through 14 of investing. So the closer you are to needing the money, the less the long-term average protects you. Your time horizon is its own variable. The longer your runway, the more risk you can absorb. The shorter it is, the louder sequence risk becomes. If you are within 10 years of pulling money out, that risk is not academic. It is structural. Now you might be thinking, the market always comes back. That is mostly true. Markets have historically recovered from downturns, but eventually is doing enormous work in that sentence. The recovery from 2008 took years, and if you needed the money in those years, eventually did not help you. So here is the second uncomfortable truth. The 7% return assumes one thing about you that the data says is rarely true. It assumes you stay invested through a 38% crash without selling. JPMorgan Asset Management ran the numbers and found the average investor earned roughly 2.3% annualized over the 20-year period ending December 2016. 2.3. Not because the market failed them. The market did its job. They sold at the bottom. They chased what was hot. They flinched at exactly the wrong moment. 2.3% is a brutal number to sit with. The math we just walked through assumes 7. The gap between what the market returned and what real people actually earned is the gap between the spreadsheet and the bedroom mirror at 4 a.m., when your portfolio is down a third. Behavioral finance research going back to Kahneman and Tversky in the 1970s confirmed this isn't a character flaw, it is how human brains work under stress. Real financial choices come from biases, emotion, mental shortcuts, not optimization. Even Dave Ramsey, who is not famous for nuance, has said personal finance is 80% behavior and 20% head knowledge. People know the math, they cannot execute it. The honest question is not which math wins on average. It is which choice can you actually live with on the worst day of your investing life. Now let me Steelman paydown for a minute, because the case is stronger than most investing creators admit. A fixed-rate mortgage is, quietly, an inflation hedge you got for free at closing. When inflation rises, the value of money falls, and a borrower with a fixed-rate loan repays that debt with dollars worth less than the dollars they borrowed. Your nominal payment stays the same. Its real bite shrinks. Prepaying a low-rate mortgage gives up that hedge. There is also the peace of mind argument, and I think the math crowd dismisses this too easily. The psychological lift of being debt-free is documented in behavioral finance research. Reduced stress, better focus, more flexibility to take career risk or weather a job loss without mortgage default hanging over you. Real benefit, non-zero. And the old argument that the mortgage interest deduction redeems all of this? That argument has effectively died. The 2026 standard deduction is $16,100 for a single filer and $32,200 for married filing jointly. The share of returns claiming itemized deductions fell from 31% in 2017 to roughly 9.5% by 2022 and 23. Most homeowners are no longer getting any tax benefit from their mortgage interest at all. So if you have been keeping the loan partly because of the deduction, run the numbers. The deduction is probably already gone for you. Before any of this debate is even relevant, 3 boxes have to be checked. Skip these and you are optimizing the wrong decision. 1. Emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of expenses sitting in liquid savings. Without it, any market drop forces you to sell at the bottom or take on bad debt. Locking your cash in either home equity or a brokerage account before this box is checked is how people get hurt. 2. High interest debt. The average APR on credit cards assessed interest hit 22.8% in 2023, the highest level since the Federal Reserve started tracking in 1994. No investment reliably beats a guaranteed 22-point-something% return. If you are carrying balances at that rate, that money is a fire, and nothing else you do matters until it is out. 3. Employer 401k match. A 50% employer match on your contributions is an instant 50% return on your money the day you contribute. Unambiguously, the highest return move available to most employees. Walk past it and you are leaving a 50% annual return on the floor. Only after those 3 boxes are checked does the mortgage versus invest question become the primary decision. So what do you actually do? Here's where I land, and I will be honest, it is not the punchy thumbnail answer. For most homeowners in the gray zone, the cleanest answer is splitting the 500, maybe $250 into extra principal and $250 into a low-cost index fund. That is not decision avoidance. It is deliberate diversification across 2 completely different asset classes. Liquid market equity on one side, illiquid home equity on the other. You capture partial compounding upside. You reduce sequence of returns exposure. And, this is the part nobody mentions, you cut the dollar amount at risk to your own panic selling reflex roughly in half. The plan you can actually finish beats the plan that wins on a spreadsheet. There is one situation where the framework I just gave you breaks. If you are within 5 years of retirement and your rate is in the gray zone, the calculus shifts hard toward paydown. Not because the math changed, but because you have run out of runway to absorb a sequence of return shock. The shorter your horizon, the more the guaranteed return on paydown beats the average return on investing. Run your specific numbers. So back to where we started. The headline difference between investing and paydown over 20 years is real. But which side of that headline you actually land on comes down to your rate sitting inside or outside the 3 to 6% gray zone. Below 4, investing has the structural edge. Above 6, paydown is genuinely competitive. Inside, neither answer is wrong, and the hybrid is usually right. Drop your mortgage rate in the comments, just the number. The conversation in the comments on these videos ends up being more useful than the video itself, because everybody's situation is just different enough to be interesting. This is general education, not personalized advice. Before you actually move money, talk to a fee-only financial advisor or a CPA who can see your full picture. Subscribe if this changed how you think about the decision, because next we are pulling on a different thread. Most of the headlines tell you that you need $1 million saved to retire. The Federal Reserve's actual data on what real households have saved tells a very different story, and the gap between those two numbers changes everything about how you should be measuring your readiness right now. I will see you there.